All right, when I begin a painting then the next day, I like to just kind of get warmed up. I'll start out with some of the background to build up my drive to get into the regular meat of the painting. So I'm going to just grab just a nice big brush. I've got a size 10 here, flat. Um, I'm just having my Gamsol right here handy, just for cleaning my brush, but I've got my linseed oil right there. Okay, so now I'm just going to tell you for now what I'm going to be doing on my palette as I'm working. When I get into more interesting things throughout the painting, I will show you more about what I'm mixing. For now, I'm just putting a little bit of oil in my brush and looking at the background, seeing where I need to kind of work through layers. I see there's more, some burnt sienna, some bluer violet tints going on back here. So I'm going to just kind of play with some of those just to warm myself up a bit. Might be a little too bright. Just have to jump in and just start going. And this is just going to be a thin scumble to begin with. And I don't mind that the weave of the linen shows through because I think I can see it on his too. And I like the idea of backgrounds being a little bit thinner. It just sort of gives it a little bit of a interesting kind of loose quality that I like. I like a warmer atmosphere too in the backgrounds here, just a little bit, because I'll use the cool colors where I want them, just to help play with some of this atmosphere in the background. As I come around to this side, it is a bit darker over here. Now, whatever master copy you're going to be working on, you'll have to sort of take apart the painting and on your next day, the second day, just to, usually, you know, they worked in layers, and some master paintings, just depending on what it is that you're working on, they would have typically worked in layers. So you'll just have to take that apart. If you're working on a very tight, classical, like a Bouguereau or whatever, those definitely were in layers over a series of days. I'm grabbing a little bit of alizarin crimson now with that ultramarine blue, just for down here. A little bit more linseed oil. Let my brush off, because I want this fairly thin down here too. I think I'm just going to add the slightest bit of yellow ochre, just to give it a little bit of atmosphere. That's too warm. Let's make it a little cooler. A little white. The smallest amount of white on alizarin. There, that's a very small amount. And working on the background kind of gets your mind in the where you need to go for the painting, and it just sort of helps prepare you for what you're going to be working on. I'm thinking about his face, I'm thinking about his hat, and as I kind of bring this in to a close in here, the different areas and things that I want to work on. And I've got some of that over here too, so I'll just put it on both sides while I have it on my brush. Always make sure to look around when you're working on your paintings. I like to take the scumble and kind of mix and do this way and that way a little bit. Gives it some vitality just to mix it up a little. And that first layer had a nice amount of time to dry, so it is completely dry under here, which is good. I see a little sienna in here, so I'm just going to gently place that in. I always wonder, why did he put, why this, why that? You know, why would he have put this little small patch of warmth or sienna? And so when I'm wondering these things, I kind of cover it up. Say, what would it look like without it? And sometimes, you know, you can look at that and say, well, you know, if that wasn't there, it would have really affected an entire area. So how can I make sure to try that on something I'm going to do next time? And so that's how we learn from these is, wow, I wouldn't have even thought to do that, but look at how much that simple choice, how much that added to the overall feeling and design. So those are things to watch for. So as I come up here more, I'm going to actually lower this painting a little. All I'm doing here is I'm just taking a little bit of the edge of the brush and just going up and down a little. It's very, very thin, the application of paint here, but it's really just to get some of the layering of the different colors and just energy stuff that I see going on in this background here. It's almost this beautiful abstract, sort of the opalescent quality that we talked about in the still lifes. It's just very, very, I'm closely observing what I see going on directly behind his hat back in here. And some of these subtle little things back in here. They're pretty, but I don't want them to become distracting, so I just want to keep it very sort of quiet and downplay it a little. It's more the effort of trying to learn, you know, how did they do these things? Look at how cool that was. How can I put that in my art? If I really like that, which I do, you know, how do I make these decisions going forward? Here, so I want to try to pick up on a little bit of that. I know that I need to sort of work on the shape of his hat some more. Brush a little bit smaller. This is a size 6 flat, and I am going to mix up just a beautiful, very dark ultramarine blue. This is for the hat. Ultramarine blue. So it's again, you're not missing anything on my palette. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. Maybe a little bit more blue than brown, just to keep it really dark. Now I'm going to come back up in here and just start. You really don't see any brush strokes in there. There are some very subtle changes where it looks like it's velvet. It just sort of makes a little bit of a change, so I'll just get some of that value shifting towards the end. Right now I need to get the shape exact. And the edges on this hat are very soft. And I'm very lightly lifting up my pressure as I'm working on this area because I want my edges to really reflect his edges. Just using the chiseled edge, just softening that edge a little bit as it contours around. And I'm looking to where these significant places make a large jump in the hat. And it's right in line with the corner of his eye. So I'm holding my brush up here to the corner of the eye, and I see that the hat is going to make a jump right here. And then it levels out and jumps up again. Where does it jump? About the middle of that eye. Yep, right there. Yeah, it needs to come up higher. Letting it sort of intermix with that violet that I had there in the first place. Now I'm going to start pulling in some of that sienna mixture that I see around his hair. So I see sienna, burnt sienna, and some yellow ochre. The lighter stuff is. And grabbing some of the darker passages in here. Okay. Now when I squint down and just look at what is that color back in there, I'm just going to try to grab what I see that as a little bit of, there's just the smallest hint of white, just to give it a bit of coolness so that I can separate it from the foreground passage here that I'm trying to get in here. There's a little sienna in there too. You may have to buy alternate tubes of paint as you are working on yours. I did pick up a different tube of sort of a earthy red tone that I thought maybe I would try with some of this beautiful red tones. It does appear to be maybe a cadmium red, medium or deep, in this sleeve and this sort of shirt that is underneath. And I noticed that this edge over here, he deliberately kept very soft and undefined, except for right here. The rest of it is pretty well. But I love that there's a sharp, soft, sharp, soft, sharp, soft, just on one edge. And that is not by accident. They think of all of that when doing these. A little bit of oil will help thin it a little bit, so it makes it easier to spread the paint out. The slightest of gray, and I'll just take some of this mixture that I already had for this, some of that white and ochre. I'm going to put in just the suggestion of these folds. Things in his hat that I wanted to try to get some of these little nuances. Let's grab some sienna here and a little bit of this blue. Start laying in this collar here. Thinking about framing the face in as I start working around it. I'm going to be capturing some of these different elements, and it's kind of nice to have the paint on location that's going to be right next to it. I'm going to grab some of this cadmium red to mix in with the sienna. It's getting sort of that Rembrandt flavor of browns and reds. That first necklace is in here somewhere, but these little foldy things. While I have this color, I'm just putting it elsewhere where I see it. Just grabbing a little bit of the alizarin and the blue. And again, this is just ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Mostly blue. Just pressing lightly and lightly as I bring this darker paint up into the lighter red, his neck and chin. What I like to do when I start a face is I want to get the eye sockets and the nose relationship structure in shape. That doesn't mean I paint the eyes to completion and the nose to completion. It means I want to get this eye socket relating to this one, and then the distance relating to here exactly right, and how those shadow pieces all connect and play together. So to do that, I'm going to mix up my darker value that I see in the face first. And I pretty much have that color here, but I do want to get a little bit more sienna, and I can grab some ochre. And then you check it. How's that? Is that going to be good? It's pretty close. I'm going to hold my palette up a little bit closer, so I hope you can see that there. So just taking, when I squint down at its face, yeah, that's better, where I see these darker pieces, and it will be difficult for me to talk during this time, so I'm going to really be focused on heavy, heavy concentration. But as far as what's happening on my palette, it's pretty much going to be that ochre color right now that I'm using. I'm only going to get those areas where I see that. There'll be slight variations, maybe a little sienna, maybe a little bit of this or that, but for now that's all I'm going to really use. And this is just a size 3 brush. It's a size 3. Very soft edge where it mixes with the background color. So I'm going to take a little bit of alizarin and sienna just to get this over here. His hat, very soft edge where it meets up with the dark of his hat. I'm going to actually grab some of that dark and merge the two, just soften that edge. Bringing this down, I want to bring this nice dark hat right up to his face. There, down to his ear. And that will be brighter in there, but for now, at least it helps to get it back where it belongs. Back, back, back. There. All right, so mapping out where these shadows are going to go. And I lay my brush very loosely because I don't want to lose what I had for information underneath, but I also want to get some color down. So I put a little bit of cadmium yellow in with this because his hair was very red, and a little bit of cadmium red with the cadmium yellow gives me a really nice sort of an orange. And but I'm keeping it very loose. because I still have to paint skin around it and all that. But right now it's only facilitating as being the passage of a value, just a tone. I'll come back through with other information and get that looking a little bit more accurate. But I do like here where the hair softens that edge and we see sort of that red hair emerging into shadow. But again, maintaining my squinting, looking down at this whole area in here. I'm grabbing some shadow color and hitting these values up a little bit darker in here. Always squinting. I'm not worried about all the little nuances yet. Just keeping this very shadowy, quiet. And then down here where chin curves and goes under, I'll grab a little more sienna and blue just to keep it darker and quieter. I have some of that already mixed up on my palette. I'll just grab that. Gray in the skin there. Okay, and then a little bit darker where his chin is separate. It's cadmium red. Yes, I should get some more out. A little bit of the white. Maybe a touch of yellow. I'll lay this down just to suggest where it's going to go for his lower lip. And a little on his top. That's fine, just like that. I'll come back in there with more information later. But I like this color that I have on my brush, and I see it down here under his chin, a little bit on his chin, and up here in his nostril. So you can kind of jump around where you see some of these other colors and flick it here and there where you see it. Just like this orange that I'd mixed up earlier, I see it right up here in his eye. So I want to just put that in place and over here. So if you have a color on your palette and you know you're going to need it to get another area, just grab it. There's nothing that says you can't. So some of these areas I'm just going to take and loosely connect. There's really no paint on my brush that I'm using. I'm just using the paint that's on the canvas to help unite some passages. So there's a little bit of grayish here, a little bit of white, and he's got sort of this 5 o'clock shadow down here. And again, like I said, I'm still working on the middle tone to dark passages. So I want those to have a soft transition where needed. So now I'm going to take some white and right into the pile that I have here, just going to grab a little bit of yellow ochre. Before I get too much further, I'm going to grab some more red. Cad red. So I have my mixture of yellow ochre and white, and a little bit of cad red. I put a little bit next to it. It's extremely potent. So this is what I end up with. So now with this color, it's not my brightest skin color, but it's starting to get into the lighter areas. So I'm going to come through where I see this and just start suggesting some places where it could use a little bit more clarity in this in between middle tone and highlight area. almost like a dingy, kind of dirty skin color. Kind of, there's a little grayish tone in there. I'll put some up here on this side too. I think I'm going to, at this point now, with that same mixture, start working just around the eyes. And I'm going to take variations of ochre. Some of these skin tone colors will have a little bit more ochre in them, but I want to work both eyes at the same time. So if I see some on this side, I'm going to put it on both, or look for it on both as I see it. And this is one of the things I'll do when I'm painting a regular portrait too, not just a copy. Always looking to see where I can soften something, lose something. How did he handle this area? I think that, you know, did I make it the right temperature? Is it too cool, too warm? Matching someone's work, it's kind of easy because they took out all of that difficult thinking and they decided for you, okay, this area is going to be warm, this area is going to be cool. So just follow my lead. And that makes it a little bit easier. So my thought process now has shifted. Like I said, I'm just going to work on the eye passage now, but I'm taking some of that color that I already mixed and going to be using that to help me sculpt this passage. So I think what I'm going to do is some of this I will work in time-lapse, so you can see kind of on a faster motion what I'm going to be doing, because it may be difficult to really understand what I'm doing just by watching in regular speed, because it's hard to see the brush strokes, I think, maybe because it's too far away. So I'm going to zoom in as much as possible, and I will work a little bit faster so you can follow along. Okay, so this is now day 3 of working on this painting, and what I want to do before I get going is just call to your attention the picture that I have here, where I have side by side the original painting and then mine. And there's an app you can get on your phone, and it is actually for Instagram, but you can get it even if you don't have Instagram. And I always take pictures and put them side by side on this app so that I can flick my eye back and forth, and all of a sudden all of the differences pop out. So I'm going to strongly recommend that you get this app and put your painting that you're copying right next to your painting, and you will suddenly see all these differences. And it gives you somewhere to go. So I have it now here on my computer, and I'm going to be referring to that while I make the adjustments on this that need to be made. So I have my palette here on my lap, and you'll forgive me if I don't hold it up, I hope, because I now have a detached tendon in my left elbow, and my right shoulder is wreaking havoc, so I have to keep it down low. But all I'm going to be doing now is working on adjusting the problems in this. And I flick my eye back and forth between these two, so that's what I'm going to be doing. What I see right away that's really just driving me crazy is the width from the edge of his nose to the edge of his face over here. So I'm going to blow this up just a little bit bigger and then compare the two. So I'm going to take my finger on this one and measure that distance and compare it to another distance, that's maybe that other eye. So from the corner of his eye where the shadow starts to the edge. Okay, so now I'm going to go backwards over here. So this was the measurement I just took, and that's the distance there. So I do have to bring it in a little bit. So I'm just using a really soft brush for this. I'm just gathering just sort of a dark color here so that I can make these marks on here. It isn't much, but a little bit will help. And then the distance from the edge of his nose to the edge of his cheek is quite a bit in. So pulling that inwards over here. And then I'm looking at the edge of his mouth here to the edge of his cheek. And it's about in there. And sometimes it's not necessarily the drawing, but it could be the values in the different areas. So like this distance might be okay, but it's not a dark enough value, which can affect the illusion that I'm looking for. So his neck looked a little too wide here, so I am shaving this in a little bit too. Okay, and I think, looking at where this hair here, I'm going to have to switch to a little bit stiffer brush. So this is a size 3, but I'm able to get a little bit stronger. Sometimes a soft bristled brush is just too flexible, so I have to. And I actually have some brushes in my brush containers over here that are specifically for Rembrandt copies because they're so like broken. This one in particular I have been saving. I use this for my Rembrandt copies. It's all splayed and ruined and stuff because there are some passages in his hair and other places where it's just this loose, scrumbly kind of really interesting texture. So believe it or not, I do hold on to those. And reshaping this is kind of got weird. And I noticed too when I'm looking at these two, why is there so much impact in Rembrandt? I mean, Rembrandt is Rembrandt, but why did I miss? How did I not get such a strong feeling and sense of light? And I think it was because his darks are stronger darks. So I'm going to try to hit some of these darks a little bit more potent when I'm making these adjustments on this painting. As well as the darks on the face. I think that I didn't quite get those to the degree that they needed to be. All right, so I'm feeling better about that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to be quiet and put this in sort of just a slightly higher speed so that you can see what I'm working on and follow along that way.